And streaming has begun. Yes, we're ready to go.
Okay. The May 20th meeting of the Sandusky Landmark Commission will come to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Berkey.
Present.
Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Mr. Griffiths. Alan, you are muted, it looks like.
Sorry, I'm here. Yeah, on mute, but here.
Mr. Nagel.
Here.
Mr. Zula.
Here.
Mr. Galea.
Here.
Commissioner Meinzer.
Here.
Okay. First item on the agenda is the review of our April 15 minutes. We had a lengthy, hopefully people had the time to look at those minutes and any changes. If not, make a motion to approve.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'm not hearing much. I'm getting a heck of an echo, and I think it might be that I would suggest not only do we mute our microphones when we're not talking, but that we turn our volume down as much as possible. That each one of us only have the volume at the level that needed to hear to reduce the feedback.
All right, let's give it a try. Everybody mute. I'm going to stay on.
I'm hearing it better.
Do we have any changes to the minutes? Okay, if not, may I have
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, a second?
Second, it's Alan.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Minutes approved. Let's go on to item 3. This is the certificate of appropriateness for 256 Columbus Avenue, Vita. We have Mike Raley with us. Mike, is that correct?
Larry Knauer will be.
This is Larry Knauer. I'm covering for Mike.
Okay.
Vita.
All right. Welcome, Larry. So, Larry, what we're going to do, so you're familiar with our process, is we'll start with a presentation of your application by staff. Then members of our commission will ask questions or ask for clarification with staff. When we've satisfied questions and remarks, I'll ask for a motion. And once it's been seconded, then it'll allow our members to have a full discussion, ask questions. And at that point, we will be inviting you to either answer questions and or make clarifications of your application. And then finally followed by a roll call vote. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tom for the staff presentation.
Oh. I just got kicked out. No, well, let me.
Can you let them know that Tom got kicked out?
And I'm getting back in.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm back. It just shut out my program. Oh, One moment. All right, sorry, I'm having difficulty sharing my screen, so just give me one more try. Okay, are you guys able to see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, we'll just do it this way. So this is a certificate of appropriateness application that was postponed from last meeting. The applicant and city staff, including the Division of Engineering Services, worked to revise the plan a little bit. Just some background about the historic nature of this building. It's the Vita stores inside the old Commercial Banking and Trust Company building. It's both individually listed and in the National Register Historic District for downtown. The proposed patio has been proposed for the Washington Row side of the building, emanating from the side entrance and leaving 5 feet between the fencing and the curb. We've been working with the applicant and engineering on a temporary encroachment agreement, and that's been approved by engineering for this spot, which means that it's a seasonal patio, so it'll be removed from season to season. And there is a tree grate there without a tree in it, and we've been working with the applicant to find a way to make sure that gets covered and less not an obstruction. The applicant provided the fence construction details to you, which were in the packet, which are listed here, that meet the guidelines that the commission has set out previously when our last guideline update. And just noting that in these times, outdoor dining, of course, is significantly important for business owners, and so the applicant will also be putting out tables and chairs for non-alcohol service on Washington Row and Columbus Avenue that got approval for engineering. So staff recommends approval. We believe it meets the guidelines that we set forth, and as I said, Mr. Knauer is here to answer any additional questions about the application.
Okay, do any of our members have questions for staff or any clarifications you would like to hear?
Yes, Tom. It's John. Through you, Mr. Chairman, what are the blue circles on the picture there?
Those are lampposts along Washington Row.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Well, if not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see dimensions. How wide is that enclosure at this time? I'm not hearing an answer.
Tom?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Tom, how wide is that enclosure?
It is, let me get there's 5 feet, as I mentioned, from the sidewalk, and it's too small for me to see a screen. And I would say Mr. Knauer can provide more specific
Tom,
details.
The numbers matter here because of our standard.
Yeah. So if I may?
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, okay. The distance across that sidewalk from the building to the edge of the curb is 14 feet. 5 feet in makes the inside of the fence 9 feet across there. And there is a step at the door that adds another 16 inches. In the area around the door area, it's actually a little bit bigger than 9 feet. In the closure, it's a little over 10 feet.
Tom, since we're talking about the fence dimensions, could we see that instead of chairs?
Is that not on the screen?
I'm seeing chairs.
No, we're looking at chairs.
On YouTube, it's showing the patio, but on Microsoft Teams, it's showing chairs.
All right. Well,
Maybe I should have YouTube on.
Okay. Is that showing now?
No. There it is. Got it.
Okay. There we go.
All right, so I can't help noticing that we seem to have a problem with leaving 5 feet for people to walk here. We're talking about a tree grate, but what about the lamppost? My first impression is, at least one other business is putting 4 tops in enclosures in 6.5 feet. I think I'm seeing more than 60% here.
It comes out to 60%.
It does. I mean, you can't really count the curb itself to walk on. And tree grate's pushing it, but a lamppost you definitely got to get around. I'd be fine. I don't care how long the enclosure is. I don't care if it's the length of the building. It's not about the area we're offering here. The thing is, we get ire from the public, and I'm kind of in the same sense of being offended by overreach. When we're using an unneeded part of the sidewalk is way different than obstructing the sidewalk. And this is quite a bit. I see a dimension there now. It's too blurry. Is it? Am I seeing 11-foot 4? What is that dimension I'm seeing?
That's 144 inches from the door to the gate, and then there are 16 inches of the offset of the building.
Right. And then we also...
Then that 16 inches comes off to 144. So at the building width, at the primary area, it's 114 minus 16 inches, so 98 inches wide across that area. So not quite,
this is kind of frustrating trying to have something with dimensions that I can't read. I think I'm seeing 114 inches.
It's 114 inches from the door at one end to the edge of the gate. It's only at that door area where it's 114, and that is because the door is inset the sidewalk on the main part of the building.
And what's the other dimension more toward the left that I'm seeing?
It's 16 inches from the 144, or 98 inches.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
It's 16 inches subtracted from 114.
No, there's a dimension
98 inches.
Oh, 98.
It's 98.
Yes, sir.
All right, so it looks equal, but it's not. There must be a step there or something. Okay. So 98. Okay.
And then it's another 60 inches from there to the curb.
Right, okay, so, and that's an internal dimension divided by 12, so over 8 feet. Yeah, so yeah, I think we still have a lamppost problem.
Yeah, I would say the lamppost, this drawing's probably not to scale. I know the with the lampposts, in relation to the lampposts, I know the applicant and Division of Engineering is ensured to make sure that there's adequate 5-foot clearance there. So that was a stipulation with engineering, was to make sure that there was always 5 feet clearance.
Okay.
Right. And that's what we designed for, and it should stop short of that lamppost 5 feet.
So we can condition the approval on ensuring 5 feet everywhere. And that should cover the fuzzy parts. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, concerns from members?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, through you, this is Ryan. Am I correct in that from the previous application, I believe the last one, there was 10 feet between sidewalk and fence? Has this patio grown since then? And it looks like the way the tables are spaced, I mean, there's a lot of space there. Is this a space plan based on COVID, social distancing things, or what's the reasoning for that if it has grown?
Tom, Larry?
Yeah, this is Larry. So the tables are placed in a way to assure that we have more than 5 feet of clearance around. If you walk down there, you've got a number of obstructions with the trees, the grates, you've got the light posts, and if you come down and see the way I have tables laid out right now, that we can add more, we have room to add more tables and still maintain the 5-foot clearance, but we're spreading them out so that people can get around the light posts, people can get around the signs, those kind of things, and still get around the tables. And yes, that also helps in the compliance with COVID.
Ryan, does that satisfy you?
No, I don't think that, at least I didn't hear it. From the last application, I think I read that there was 10 feet between curb and front of fence, and now it's 5. Is this a different revised plan from the last application that was tabled?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. It is, the plan is revised in the sense that it's, obviously drastically been reduced in size, but the minimum distance, or where the 5 foot is, that was on the plan before. There were some instances where the fencing on the last plan jutted in, and it may have been that 10 feet may have been a dimension on there, but with the 5 foot that you see there was part of the original plan.
Okay.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would just say that if I'm agreeing to 5 feet, I'm definitely not counting the curb per se, which tends to be like a curved surface that you can't safely step on. And just for the record, that it has nothing to do with this application, but generally speaking, I think and maybe we have to revisit some of these tree grates if we want lots of outdoor dining, but it's just bad policy, in my opinion, to count a tree grate as access. Trees get bigger. You can approve it today, and then the tree gets bigger, and tree grates get uneven. And in my opinion, we should be relying on paved surface and not tree grates to count for access. But that's just a general comment that obviously is relevant here, but won't necessarily be affecting my decision here because it hasn't been our policy yet, but I think we have to kind of ask ourselves what our policy needs to be going forward.
I think that's a good point. Any other concerns or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Yes.
I make a motion that we accept the applicant's proposal as read.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, not here in a second. I would be more inclined to second it if it was conditioned on the on maintaining a 5-foot clearance operationally at all times.
Mike, are you willing? Go ahead.
This is Alan. I was going to second it. I would like to have discussion, but I will second the motion.
Okay, let's take your second and then let's follow up now with discussion. Mike, you want to make your point?
Okay, how about motion to amend to condition the approval on maintaining 5 feet of clearance at all times. And I understand that this fence is, I should have said something first, then made the motion. I understand this fence is going to be temporary and movable, so I'm happy that the applicant will have some flexibility in moving things around if he finds it suitable. So I think it would be prudent of us to just, it's sort of understood anyway, but to make it explicit that the approval is conditioned on maintaining the access.
Do I have a second on the?
I can amend the motion, Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I'd like to just point out, just for the record, that it is to be reevaluated on a yearly basis. If there are any problems, that we could evaluate it next year. But yeah, I can amend the motion that we accept it as read with the understanding they'll maintain a 5-foot clearance for pedestrian traffic.
Okay. Second?
Second that. Alan, second.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Galea,
Yeah.
Mr. Zuloff,
Yes.
Mr. Nagel,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
and Dr. Berkey.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Larry. Thank you for helping us.
Thank you for your help, and I look forward to working with you on other opportunities.
Good luck, Mr. Knauer.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4 is 158 East Market Street, the Fike Building. And do we have Lynn Harlan here?
Yes.
Hi, Lynn. Anybody else?
And, you also have Mike Maroos.
Hi, Mike. Welcome.
Hello.
We're very excited about the building and the plans that you have. So were you on to hear our process? You comfortable with us moving forward? You understand our process, meeting process?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we'll go ahead with the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Fike building, a little context about its historic nature. It was constructed in 1909, originally as a 3-story building, which we'll show you a photo of. Oh, sorry about that. Are you able to still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 5 additional stories were added in 1916. It was the former home of Citizens Banking Company, and As you'll see, the original storefront, which is shown here, was removed in the mid 20th century. Replaced.
Tom, we're still seeing the proposed patio for Vita.
I don't know why this is doing that. Is that better?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we have the location. Oh, okay, we're looking at original. Now you got the location slide.
Okay. Sorry.
Now it's the original story facade.
Yes. Okay. So this is a photo submitted by the applicant to show you the original 3-story building, and then the photo of the Citizens Bank Company in the 1920s as it appeared then. And some additional photographs were all included in the packet of the Fike building from this past winter. There's the south side of the building. And as we go, if the applicants and commissioners have questions, just let me know if any of these want to go back to any of these photos, and I can navigate back to them. This is a rendering of the north facade of the building, in giving a general overview of the renovations. And then the applicant also submitted the elevation drawings for the front facade, which will be a attempt to restore, reconstruct with some minor differences the banking facade from the 1920s. And then they also provided elevations for the window replacements along the other elevations of the building. And the components of restoration can essentially be broken into 4 different categories, as I mentioned in the staff report. The reconstruction of the storefront, the just general masonry work on the outside, window replacement on the north side. I separated these 2 out as I think they may warrant different discussions. And then the window replacement on the south, east, and west sides. And with that, staff did give a recommendation of approval. We know that the applicant did send additional information earlier this week with some additional information on the windows. And I know staff did give the caveat that we wanted to have a discussion on the replacement of the wooden windows, but staff is very supportive of the project and recommends approval. And I would have any questions for staff, happy to answer them, and then with more details, I'm sure the reps from Maroos would be happy to add more detail to.
Since you presented it in 4 different pieces, I would suggest to my colleagues that we take a look at the 3 that have been recommended for approval first, take those one at a time with your questions, discussions, and then any input from Mike and Lynn. And so why don't we go through those 3 first, and then staff didn't have a recommendation for the window replacement on the north side. Let's save that for last because I anticipate we're going to have a little bit more discussion and clarification from Mike and Lynn to tell us exactly what the plans are related to that. So why don't we start with the restoration or the reconstruction, you're calling it, of the storefront first, and see if we have any questions first for staff. Questions, Tom? Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a very elaborate evaluation done of the exterior of this building.
Yeah, Lynn?
Yes.
Can I ask you to hold? We're gonna first see if there's any discussion between the members and staff, and then we'll get to you in just a little bit.
Okay.
Any questions or clarifications for staff, or any comments among members first?
Mr. Chairman, are we talking about the application generally or a particular?
No, we're talking about the storefront.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would comment that I did visit the site very recently, and I see that work has begun. I would have felt better if that hadn't begun before we had review. In this particular case, I can't imagine wanting to preserve that front, but just making the minor point that the proper process would have been to review this before the demolition of the existing front began. I think it's pretty obvious there's not much left of the prior front. So I think that the design is brilliant and arguably better than the original, but a very nice design, and I think it's fits our guidelines in every way that I can think of. So, but if we're only talking about the storefront and not the windows above it, then I would stick with that comment.
That is the focus of our discussion right now.
Are we? My question is, and it's a little off topic, but I'm a little worried that some of the stuff we're digging into could have contribute to the structural integrity, and I trust that the applicant is being very careful because there's a lot of weight on that stuff that's coming out of there, and thoroughly understanding the structural elements before with each swing of the hammer.
Yeah, and maybe once we get to that, we'll ask Lynn to give us some input on structural issues.
Sure, thank you.
Are we ready? Somebody ready to put forth a motion approving the staff recommendation on the reconstruction of storefront, which would then be followed by a discussion with Lynn and Mike?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded. Joe Galea, second.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, let's start with your questions for Lynn. Maybe Lynn, just start with the last thing that Mike expressed a concern about, just overall the structural issues. Can you give us kind of an update?
Yeah, this, as you saw in the pictures, there were two different front elevations of this building. We do have a demolition permit, so we started some of the front to see what we had, because we have no drawings or anything as to how that precast face facade was put on. So we started digging into it just to see how it was hanging. It's basically just hanging off the building, off of angles and a couple of beams. We needed to see that to determine how we would be able to build a new facade. I think the original facade is still back there.
Really?
And that's what we started breaking into to see what we had. And we'd like to get the rest of it off just to see exactly what we have. I don't think it's creating any structural issue on the building, because the original beams and all under the big second floor windows all still there.
My concern, for what it's worth, is we went through the concrete block right to the interior elements of the building. So I wonder how much, though, that double layer of concrete block is contributing to supporting the beam, if any. In any event, there's certainly no front left there, because all that's there is concrete block, and I'm seeing Venetian blinds or something. Right?
Yeah, that concrete block, I think, was added as a filler to have something to attach that precast to. That's what we were trying to find, what the original structure was that's there, and what we had to take out to get to the new design, to be able to create the new design. So.
Well, and the only thing that makes me nervous, and this again is sort of outside what we're talking about, but what makes me nervous is that this was originally designed as a 3-story building with 5 stories piled on top of it. So hopefully there were no compromises made in that regard. But in any event, I'm really kind of getting off a topic here, so I don't want to exercise you too much. Don't do it for me if if the chairman wants to, or others want to hear it. But I got my my little suggestion, my comment in, and I'm happy.
Larry Cadawi.
Other questions for Lynn regarding the restoration of the storefront?
Our whole intent was to try and make it look as close to the 1920s version of it, but we added a second entrance, or a third entrance to the east, I guess it is, because we're not sure yet how the tenant space is going to work out. So it basically gave more symmetry to the front elevation also.
Windows and doors, you're talking about a dark bronze finish, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's what they originally were. They were dark on the first floor.
Would that be similar to, did that ever match the windows above? And what
No,
color?
the windows above are satin cream, kind of a cream color, light beige color.
Other questions regarding the restoration of storefront? If not, roll call, please.
Dr. Berkey?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Griffith?
Yes.
Mr. Nagel?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
Yes.
Mr. Galea?
Yes.
Commissioner Meinzer?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Let's see, with the next item, let's take a look at the window replacements to the other three sides of the building. And if I understand that correctly, Lynn, those are going to be black framed?
Yes. Which is about what they are now. They're dark now.
Questions from members? Any clarifications?
And Mr. Chairman, through you, question for the applicant. Is this a tax credit project?
We are working with a company called Energility, putting a package together along doing an ASHRAE level 2 to work with to get an ODSA energy loan. So that was all part of the design of this building, of replacement of the windows and other interior energy phases.
So no, it is not a historic tax credit finance project.
Gotcha.
Correct. It's not historic, no.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You know, I feel strongly that in this particular case, the iron or steel framed windows contribute strongly to the character of the building, vernacular as it is back there. The windows won't look like that, will they? I mean, they won't have the extra framework. They're just going to be, or I'm not sure I'm clear on that. And it's sort of tricky because I'm having trouble bringing up my application here. But can you comment on the appearance of the lights in the windows vis-a-vis what's there now?
Yeah, there's still a metal window, but they are just clear glass. Will not have all the divisions in it. What you had before was like 3 divisions because there was a hopper window in the middle. These are all fixed windows now because this building will be completely conditioned, all new heating, all new AC systems. At the time this building was open, there were operable windows. There won't be any operable windows anymore. They'll be the same size. We're using the same openings. They just will not have the divided lights, because the little squares you see on this were the hoppers that opened before.
Right, understood. I'm not, I just learned something about the term hopper windows. I hadn't heard of it, but I understood that the part of the window opened, obviously
They pushed out.
Having the whole window open would be unwieldy, and they were kind of cool because they would flip out and maybe not let much rain in when you opened them. And so yeah, just that observation that it is going to have a significant impact on the character of the building. I'm not sure if I can, live with that or not. Yeah, I'm probably inclined, given the energy esse and everything else. I think we had great success in the building we just looked at Vida, that they, with a certain degree of success, preserved the iron windows, and I think that's a case where it was certainly important and worth it. So.
Yeah, Mike, we received state tax credits for that project, and those are replacement of the original glass. We kept the sashes within the structure. Sure. I think it's a visual difference. I think that what we looked at when we got on that second, third floor and all the way up to 8, you also stand in that space now that it's wide open and there's no walls every 5 feet you walk, and the visual clearance of those window units that you get being clear glass from the interior lookout for our end user, our office tenants, is pretty spectacular.
Right.
And we just thought that, why not give as much view as you can give? And does it deeply impact the look? Can we live with that? And we just thought the end user would be really happy with that clear look.
And I totally get that. And I'm just sort of probably going on too much about it, but as we deliberate this, we should consider that we are deviating from the standard to do this, but this might be a case where, I can hold my nose and live with it and actually see the advantage of it. So, but we need to at least be aware that we're deviating from the standard in doing this. I'd be inclined to vote for it anyway, because I understand your case, and I agree with it.
That's a point well made, Mike. Our role is a tough one at times because we have to walk the line between historic preservation and practical reality. And I'm sure you've done the same thing as you've drawn up plans for this building. So we appreciate that and understand that. Are there any other questions regarding the window replacement for the 3 sides of the building?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
On that same note, did we look into doing replacement windows as far as replacing either the panes or that same look? Is that even something we considered, or, just wondering?
These existing windows are in quite bad shape. These were just a thin steel frame, and most of them are rusted pretty good. So these would be very difficult to try and restore. Plus, you would still only be able to get your single pane glass in them, so you wouldn't be gaining any of your energy efficiency or anything.
And also to answer that, we at one point had a plan 2 years ago, and we did submit for historic and state tax credits, federal and state. And at that point, we did price up every possible option. And Lynn's right. I mean, ultimately, the feasibility of working with those damaged frames, we're getting pretty out of line. But we have evaluated a lot of different avenues.
Thank you.
Anything else from members? Okay, if not, roll call, please.
Commissioner Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Galea,
Yes.
Mr. Zula,
Yes.
Mr. Nagel,
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
and Dr. Berkey.
Yes. All right, motion passes. The third item that we separated out was the proposed masonry work to the building. Lynn, if you could give us an overview of the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, we've had a couple of extensive evaluations done on the facade. Technical Assurance is a company we used, and they put out a report on it, evaluating lintels, the amount of brickwork that needs tuck pointed, replaced, etc. We're hiring a restoration company that will come in and do all that brickwork. The lintels actually aren't too bad. I don't think we're going to have to replace any. They will have to be cleaned and painted and all, but the masonry's not in horrible shape. There's quite a few places we're going to have to take some brick out, replace, and do tuck pointing and all. And but it's a 100-year-old building, so
Right.
it's actually it's in pretty good shape. If you look at it, it's pretty good shape old building. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
am I hearing, are the lintels painted now? Oh,
Yes.
the lintels, this, you're talking about the iron or steel or whatever.
Iron to steel. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, and that'll be probably with the rust inhibitor and done well and, right.
Yeah. Yeah, those aren't all just angle irons on there. The steel structure in the back has a plate welded on the bottom that is actually the lintels. So that's what we have to go back, clean off, and restore.
Others?
Is this, what's the nature of the brick? Is that common brick or is that I'm asking more than one thing here. Is it, do you know, have you characterized the mortar at all? Is it Portland cement mortar or lime mortar or?
I'm not certain.
Will we be evaluating to make sure that we're not doing long-term damage by using mortar that's too strong for the brick? Or you know, that might be better brick than you see on some of our other buildings in town. But I really don't know.
Yeah, we'll be following the guidelines of the reports that we had done for the restoration. It'll include, like we said, the brick replacement, the lintels, repairs, power washing the building, and cleaning it all up, getting it back into a good shape.
Right. I think our standards actually call, I think the Department of Interior standards caution about aggressive cleaning measures. You know, there's some sandstone elements and stuff like that. As long as you're you know, sensitive to that and take care, I think that your plan is fine. So sometimes you can do some damage, as you well know. You can do some damage with aggressive cleaning, and when you say power washing, I think in most, it's not always recommended, right?
Okay, yeah. Let's say exterior cleaning.
Thank you. Very good.
Any other concerns, questions? Okay, if not, roll call, please.
Dr. Berkey,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths,
Yes.
Mr. Nagel,
Yes.
Mr. Zula,
Yes.
Mr. Galea,
Yes.
and Commissioner Meinzer.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. This leaves us with the window replacement of the upper floors of the front of the building, the Market Street side, So we didn't have a staff recommendation on this. Lynn and Mike, I'm going to ask you to provide some more specific information. One of the things I think that's tough for our commission is when we don't see, for example, a visual of the actual product you intend to install. It leaves us to look at the architectural artistic renderation that you supplied to us and try to imagine what it's going to look like. We already know that you're intended on painting them an off-white color similar to the original, but I'm sure we're going to have members that are going to want some more specific information, because in terms of the historic preservation of this building, the windows are 90% of it. I mean, it's to us, to the community, that's the visual part of it that's so important. So if you could just spend a little time talking about those windows, talk to us about the condition of those windows first.
The windows right now are wood. They're stained on the inside, painted on the outside. There's no cladding on these windows, so they're not in good shape. They don't seal correctly. They're single pane. Some of them are broken. It's just our feel that to get a product that will be around for a long time, we can put an aluminum window back in that will look virtually like it does today, without the maintenance and without the continued deterioration. Most of them are not in very good shape. And the fact that I stated before on trying to get the energy efficiency up on this building was built with no insulation interior-wise or anything. So to meet any type of standards, this building doesn't meet them. So we'd like to get the energy efficient glass and all in. For the structure of the windows themselves, you see the vertical lines, you get the brick, and then you've got the 3 vertical lines, and then the windows in between. The verticals stay as they are, and those will be, the new windows will go in between those. So we're taking out the window and the transom, leaving those vertical elements. So we're not taking the whole window out. So we're putting them back in to look just like they do today. And they will be aluminum windows. They will be completely, all the wood will be wrapped, but the windows we're using are made by Quaker, and they're a historic series window. These windows are used in a lot of building restorations. Downtown Cleveland, the Halley building and all use the same window. They look very historic. I don't think, if you saw this building today as it is and you see it in 6 months when there's windows in it, are you really going to notice that we replaced the windows? Probably not. It's not like on the back where we took all the grids and all out. They'll still have the same look with today's technology.
How about the arched windows at the top?
Same thing. Taking those out. Those will be put in there. There'll be separates. There'll be a window. There'll be a bar, and then the half round. So there will not be one window with one big piece of glass. It'll be separated the same as they are there. Like I said, the little transoms above the big pieces of glass will be divided the same way they are now. The windows, even though they will not be operable, the side windows, you've got what looks like a double hung and then a fixed and a double hung. Our windows will be fixed. The small ones will be fixed, but they'll still have that bar across looking like a double hung window. It should look identical to what that elevation looks in that photograph.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
question for the applicant. On the second floor, it looks like that is a single window in the middle. Is that going to stay the same, or?
Yeah, there's a divider that someone pulled out at one time or another. It looks different than up above, but it actually, you can see the line in it, and you can see on the sill where there used to be a divider in it that they took out. They may have taken out two smaller pieces of glass in that divider and put one big piece of glass in it sometime. It will look like the upper floors. All floors will look alike.
And I think our thought process behind that was that if you're looking at an internal office layout, that gives them more flexibility to hit an interior wall on the mullion.
Yeah, that mullion's like 7 inches wide. You can get a wall up to that mullion when they're put back in, like they are in this photograph.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mike Meinzer. I just have a question. On the arched windows on the top, is that a heated space? And is that thermal pane or triple pane or?
It's all thermo. Yeah, those are all new, all thermos, same design as they are there now. They'll look, I think they look like double hungs now. They'll look like double hungs on the new design.
Mr. Chairman?
I put out, I don't know if everybody got it. A couple of days ago, I put out cut sheets of what all the individual panels look like. And that's,
Mr. Chairman?
That came right off of our quote, or our final quote. So that's how they're to be manufactured.
It's Meinzer again.
Yes.
I just a little bit off the record, but we were discussing a lot of the buildings downtown with these similar windows, like Dailies and Hot Dog Tony's want to go with AZEK in the top of the windows. I suggest that we refer to this in the future, and this would be the standard that we try to go to with these arched windows.
Mr. Chairman, I second. That makes a lot of sense. And I would.
Well, that was a motion. I just suggest. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I'm supporting what you're saying.
Your spirit's supporting it.
Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, just to the applicant, I'd like to congratulate them on design and the.
Alan, we're having trouble with your mic.
Okay. Anyway, I'm happy. We'll leave it at that.
There you
go. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think there's a rather prominent discrepancy here. The rendering we have of the front elevation shows the windows quite different than the present state. In particular, on the second floor through the 7th floor, let's call them the transoms, the upper windows above the large windows, not above the double hung sash windows, are divided in two in every case. Maybe you can see this.
Yeah, I can.
You see how they're all divided. This is I think a significant characteristic of the window arrangement. The elevation shown in the application doesn't look anything like that. It shows those as undivided, of covering the full width of the wider building, of the wider windows.
Yeah, they missed. Yeah, good catch. They missed that because if you look, I don't know if you've got those drawings in front of you that I sent over the other day of the actual windows. The A2 windows actually show that other dividing. making
I
the
did notice
making
that,
the
but I just
transoms.
wanted to make sure that we understand what we're approving here.
Yep.
And so you're just saying that's just an oversight on the front elevation?
That's an oversight. Yep, correct.
So what we would be approving, and so we should make it explicit in our approval, is that the divisions all match the present state.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike, you're exactly right. Lynn and I actually had that conversations about 20 minutes before the meeting. And I said, you know what, that's going to be a visual discrepancy that's going to cause a, discussion. So we're in the same court. It's going to look the same.
Can people see this?
Yeah, Mike, did everybody get it? Did everybody
see what I'm
look at the
showing
cut
here?
sheets?
Yeah, correct. It'll look like the drawing that Mike's holding up with the additional divider on those transoms. Yes.
This is Google Maps Street View here.
Yeah.
But I think it's important because I think that really does add a lot of appeal. I think it's important. You seem to agree.
It has it. I know. I'm looking at the drawings right here in front that we're purchasing from, and they do definitely have that other divider in them. So that will exist.
So, Mr. Chairman,
it'll look like that.
Yes.
So having established that much, I've seen, not lately, but fairly recently, I've seen the windows from the inside, seen them up close. This is a case where we're really pushing the envelope because these windows are fixable. And nowhere in the standard does it say, go ahead and throw away restorable windows to save energy. It's almost the opposite, saying that the standards say the windows don't make that much difference. In this case, it probably does because there's so many of them. But they basically say the windows don't, to paraphrase, they don't make that much difference, and it's often cheaper to fix the old windows. I don't know if when I saw these windows, it wasn't with an eye toward, can you put thermal paint in them or anything like that. But this is one where I got to say I'm not terribly comfortable. I guess I probably won't tilt at this windmill too much because I'm pretty sure the rest of the board will probably just approve it. But we should be aware that we're really giving up an opportunity to save some old growth wood. I mean, these windows are probably, it's 100-year-old wood that's lasted this long with a good deal of neglect and could probably last another 400 years with careful maintenance. Not that, so I'm frustrated with that the system and the economics of it don't allow us to do what we'd really like to do in the way of preservation here. Also, I'm aware that modern systems allow for not opening windows, but there's also a viewpoint that says maybe it's a good idea to be able to open windows. So there's that.
When you want to...
And the other thing, I invite Mr. Nagel's comments because he knows so much about this stuff and what the current trends are in building and whether we've abandoned windows you can open or not.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, these windows, having them operable, if this was residential, I think I'm understanding that this is planned to be all office, which, in this market is an interesting approach as opposed to residential. But, in residential buildings that we do, you have to almost have an operable window or two in each suite to stay competitive. But with office, I mean, if it was my office, would I want a nice lake breeze up there? Sure. But I'm guessing that the utility bills on this, I don't know, this is an applicant for the question. A question for the applicant, is this building going to be individually metered, or is this a central system that the landlord's having to flip the bill for and they're wanting to control, energy loss and things like that? So,
Mike or Len, you want to respond?
Might not need a response. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the office, having an office with an operable window is challenging because what happens is people leave them open and creates issues for that tenant. And, obviously the heating and cooling system we're going to utilize there is called it's a VRF system. It's a variable refrigerant system. And we actually have makeup air going throughout the building. So it's actually, it's a part of the pressure return air system that we don't want those windows open because it's going to mess up the balance of the heating system. So in an office building, it's pretty traditional not to have operable windows for all of those reasons. And we debated it too, because I mean, generally we like to have fresh air, especially in our residential. But in an office building, it's very challenging.
Yeah, we looked around the market considerably to try and find a window that we could get that would look so much like what we have, and we weren't about to go buy an out-of-the-box vinyl window and try and put it in there. I mean, we went to a company that they do restoration windows all over the country, and that's what they do, and that's the product that they sell, and we could get a product that could make the building, we feel, look as it does today, but function into the future with the energy efficiency and all.
Other questions or concerns?
Is it safe to say then that this window design would pretty much obviate the option of having at least some residential use in the building and pretty much commits the building for the long haul to 100% commercial?
That's the way it's being developed at this time.
Because windows that you can open could be disabled, mechanically constrained from opening, but windows that you're kind of stuck with. If somebody came to you and said, I'll pay you twice the rate, but I want a kitchen and a bathroom in there, you wouldn't have that option, would you?
No.
Okay. Just saying.
Any others?
Yeah, one question, Mr. Chairman, through you, for the applicant. What is the timeline on construction completion on this project?
Right now, we're going through demo and abatement, and we project about another month of that work. At that point, once we clear the building out, we're going to put the shop drawings in for windows, which I believe, Lynn, are between 6 and 8 weeks, we hope, with the COVID. And between that point, we'll be cleaning up the elevator shaft. We actually have to extend the elevator shaft to do a GERTI accessible elevator. So we'll be doing interior work and utilities. So our goal is really to see the facade improvements complete by the end of this year, late summer, and hopefully in the midst of the summer come to some lease agreements with a couple of our prospective tenants and have occupancy for early next year.
Yeah, currently we have demoed all the floors interior-wise, so they're now just open spaces. So we're trying to get to that point, and so we can see what we've got, so we can get potential tenants in to look at spaces that may or may not work for them. So
that's interesting. Is each floor then even the corridors structural? The corridor walls structural?
It's all column and beam.
Wow, okay.
The whole building's column and beam, so we're wide open. Our floor plan's wide open except for column spacing.
That's actually kind of amazing. I didn't realize that. I kind of assumed that there would be structural walls.
No, all the interior walls were the lightweight masonry walls, and
Wow.
very few wood walls. Everything was that lightweight masonry, the speed block, and
So that really kind of opens up options for your tenants.
correct.
It's actually pretty cool.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things that, and I understand the restoration of existing wood windows. Just one thing to keep in mind. I mean, that building, and part of the reason we didn't go historic and federal tax credits, with some of the restrictions with the corridors, when you get into those main floors now that they're wide open, I mean, you're really looking at a brand new building within an old, existing structure. And we really went back and forth on what to do with those front facade windows and, how to make them energy efficient and look the same. I mean, our intention is the building needs to look like it originally intended to, and we will keep it that way. And we're going to put the pieces and parts together to do that. But to do a building 90% and leave the primary facade wood windows and restore them as best as you can was challenging for us to make those work correctly and go all the way in and stop at that point. So, we just really feel that we're going to get, everything everyone's looking for from the historic view, and, our tenants are going to get truly a brand new building.
The only counterpoint I'd make, and not to argue with it, but that people don't think about is that I like to bring up the irreversibility of decisions. Restoring the window and then 20 years from now saying, you know what, we need some new windows, is one way of looking at it. When we pull the trigger and allow the removal of historic windows that are fixable, there's no going back. These are irreversible decisions. Saving the windows for a while, who knows how much. And this is what goes into my decision process, and I'm not sure everybody would agree with it. And I'm pretty sure how this is going to go, but I'm just sharing, some perspectives on that. The reversible decisions versus the irreversible decisions when it comes to historic preservation. Putting up a sign that's not appropriate that can be taken down is way different than removing an historic element that's important that could be saved versus, replacing it.
All right, before I ask for a motion, a clarification that when you make your motion, let's make it with the understanding that the windows, because of the discrepancy between the illustration and the cut sheets that show the accurate panes in the windows, that motion will be based upon the cut sheets, not the one-page illustration. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I move that that portion of the application be approved with a condition that, except that the divisions in all the windows will be as they are now, rather than in the elevation view submitted, and to further clarify that the divisions on the double hung windows will not be true double hung windows, that we are approving divisions to, shall we say, simulate the double hung windows. That's the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second, John.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Galea,
Yes.
Mr. Zula,
Yes.
Mr. Nagel,
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
And Dr. Berkey?
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Kristen, let's go back to item 3 on the masonry. Did we get a motion and a second before we voted?
Mr. Chairman, I clearly remember a motion and a second, and it doesn't matter who moved it. The minutes don't need to show
just
that.
checking. Okay, with that, congratulations, Lynn and Mike, and thank you. Looks
Thank
like
you.
you've done tremendous work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right, we're ready for staff updates.
Problem solved, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Please repeat. I didn't hear that.
We don't have you, Tom, if you can hear us.
Oh, I can. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
We see your slide.
Okay. So just the staff updates. The first item is administrative approval of the Firelands Credit Union signage, which an application was submitted for a certificate of appropriateness for 2 sign packages on the Whitworth building, which is a historic building as part of the City Hall complex. So the first sign that was submitted, and this was has been administratively approved for a certificate of appropriateness, is a wall sign that is above the facade, the front storefront of the credit union space, which will be which is currently under renovation for the commercial space. It meets zoning clearance and is clearly within our preservation design guidelines. And so, per the landmark ordinance, staff is reporting this at the subsequent meeting. The second one is a projecting sign, and staff had reviewed this, and there were initial questions about the signage and its appropriateness. The size conforms with the zoning requirements very clearly, but there were other issues that staff had working with. Staff worked with the applicant and Brady Signs to discuss some of these concerns. The sign was the applicant indicated the sign has been approved by the State Historic Preservation Office as part of the overall project, since this was a Maroos tax credit project. So there was a desire to bring the sign before the Landmark Commission for feedback and then subsequently for a discussion about signage in general. I will say, though, that staff does believe this sign is within the letter of the preservation design guidelines in terms of its size, despite some initial concerns and questions about it. Upon further review and talking with the applicant, staff does believe it and intends to approve, but like I said, it was desired to bring for discussion before the Landmark Commission. So they'll send that back to the chairman.
So Tom came to me with this a couple of weeks ago, and I thought that it would be a good example of something for us to discuss, because we are in the midst of looking at some additional language regarding signage for the historic district. So I would appreciate if you could give Tom some input on this. Do we have Sharon here also with us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Sharon Tursik from Maroos is on the call as well.
Okay, and so we'll be able to ask Sharon some questions as well. But please, members, jump in.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I thought I was hearing that this was approved by SHPO. Are we confident that that's accurate, or is it just not? I wonder if we could clarify that we have verification, or if there's any misunderstanding, or what the meaning with that would be, if it's not actually approved by SHPO.
Tom?
Through Mr. Chairman, that was indicated to me by the applicant, Ms. Tursick, and she can speak more on that if she's able to.
Sharon? Is she there?
I know she was.
She was at the beginning of the meeting. I don't see she's with us.
She's there, just can't hear.
Maybe she's got her mic turned off.
Her mic is not turned off according to the app.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Brady. I can jump in and just offer my, I guess my knowledge on this. I did talk to Sharon about an hour before the call started, and she said that SHPO has reviewed this and that they had a list of revisions as like a full part of the project, and there was nothing signage related on there, which led her to believe that this was basically going to be approved as originally presented, because there was they didn't earmark any signage changes. So I would say
thank you for that clarification. What I'm hearing is technically it's not approved, but they expressed no objection to that particular part of the application.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Other members?
Mr. Chairman, it's Meinzer.
Yes.
It may be this angle or the picture, but I do not think that picture fits in with the character of downtown whatsoever, that sign. So if it fits or falls within the parameters of our rules, I guess that not much we can do, but I would definitely tighten things up if it were up to me.
I would tend to agree, sir. One of the things that maybe nobody ever saw coming was we allow projecting signs. We don't specify where they go, and traditionally they wouldn't typically have gone on the edge of a property. They would have gone somewhere central or over a door or more central. In this particular case, when you put it right at the edge of the property, you're actually potentially obstructing somebody else's building or signage, and it would lead to an absurd possibility that the neighbor in retribution could put up another projecting sign covering up, an inch away. So it's sort of an odd placement. In addition, it's mounted to. We went to a great deal of trouble to preserve and expose this iron column, and then we were drilling holes in it to mount a sign to it. When we could be putting, in repairable brick, or I'm also led to understand that the storefront won't structurally accommodate a sign. And that's the only reason it's not going in a more traditional location, more central, is that the storefront, we're sort of in a oops, forehead slap. We can't put a sign on it. We can't mount a sign on it, so we got to mount it someplace else. I think it would look a lot better and a little bit less weird if it was, up above the glass. To me, it almost looks like there's two different establishments there. The sign, the flat sign, is so different from the projecting sign that it's like. So I would tend to agree that maybe our ordinance needs work, or our standards need work.
Mr. Chairman, this is
yes.
Tom. Sharon, I saw a message that she's having issues with her mic, and if she's able to jump in, or if Ryan, I may have information related to this. But I did speak with Sharon, or she did give information about the attachment, and just making sure that the installation the method is mechanically fastened, there's minimal impact to the storefront face, and that the historic ribs remain intact, and just that is something that she has expressed significant care for in terms of how it's expressed to the building. I don't know if Ryan has any specific information related to that in addition.
Am I hearing that it's like clamped on instead of drilling holes? Is that what I'm to take that?
I don't know. I don't know this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in. This is Brian again. So we would be mechanically fastening the sign to the iron column. We have discussed with Sharon, the sensitivity of the historic nature of that column. And so I know there's like some knobs and whatnot that we would basically engineer the attachment so that we wouldn't do any modification. It would just be, our plating would be spaced appropriately, so we would not be disturbing the column more than needed.
That's helpful to know.
When I saw the sign, I admit I didn't take a look at the length going away from the storefront, but I have to agree with Mike, our commissioner, Mike, our member, that it does concern me because, yes, it complies at present, but I think the question isn't whether it complies or doesn't comply, but where it will lead us. And so I immediately thought of, what if we had 4 or 5 of these going down the street? And I think it's a serious question for us to raise as we're looking at added language and asking staff to further refine it.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. I just wanted to kind of give additional comment. I do agree that our sign design guidelines, I think, need refinement. I think we need to have a larger discussion about what we want signage to be downtown. We want to take a look at our period of significance for the historic district and kind of let that inform that discussion and those decisions. And I think also, if we look at projecting signs, the most recent ones that have come through have been ones like Noble Axis, Hotel Kilbourne, where they hang off a metal bracket, and I think that's a very tasteful, in line with the historic district. Our specific guidelines, as they say, though, don't specify that beyond just a simple metal bracket, which this sign does meet the guidelines as currently stated. So from staff's perspective, despite some reservations upon initial viewing, staff does firmly believe that they fall within the guidelines after review. But that being said, we do agree that this should spur a discussion further over the next month or two about really kind of making some specific revisions and with much more specific direction in our guidelines than they presently have.
Anyone else want to give Tom some input?
Mr. Chairman, through you, this is just a comment to the applicant. Having done several of these historic tax credit deals with SHPO and dealing with signage, I would not assume just because they haven't pointed it out that it's not approved, that it is. And I would want them to sign off on that before moving forward with production, because it's come up with me that they will needle you on little things, including signage, all the way until your Part 3 is approved. And I wouldn't want to have you guys go through this effort just to have them come back later and say, well, we didn't approve it. Well, so just a word of advice.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I just learned something about that process. Very much appreciate that, Mr. Nagel. This is starting to make, given our experience with projecting signs, and I can cite a number of examples, most of them in the last 10 years, and there haven't been that many, have been troublesome. It almost makes me think we should say no signs without a variance, no projecting signs without a variance, because it's just, it hasn't worked out. A number of them have done with no review, or I shouldn't say, I know of at least 2 that were done without any review at all, and others have been contentious. So it's not working out very well. And I'm the last one to want to be the arbiter of good taste, and I try not to talk about what I like or not. But it seems, if the city wants anarchy and wants to let everybody just do whatever they want, don't complain about the outcome. But I keep hearing from citizens, on one hand, why would you want to stop somebody from doing something good? And then without taking another breath and say, why did you let so-and-so do this other ugly, stupid thing? So we're sort of schizophrenic in that regard.
I would stress that I think good taste is part of our job, because we're looking at a historic district, and maybe I've had some initial discussions with Tom regarding this. Why don't we learn from what other historic districts have done with this dilemma? Because we're putting up advertising not just in a commercial area, but in a historic district, and in my mind, that's different. And it requires a different level of standard, a different level of taste. And I would like to see what other cities have done with this dilemma.
I think it's an important point.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. I would agree with that. I think to Mr. Zulof's point, I would say that I do think a lot of that will be mitigated with more clearly defined guidelines, and I think visually giving visual diagrams and such for applicants would be much more helpful. And so I have started compiling examples from other jurisdictions and other localities, and I think moving forward we should do that. But that being said, I think the size of this sign, I think it's minimal in size. Don't really view it as obtrusive to the building, and even though there may be some specific small things we may want to see differently in the future, again, just reiterating as things stand, I think this one is not outside the guidelines and like others we have seen in months past.
Okay. Any other input for Tom? If not, Tom, other items on your staff report?
This is it, other than just indicating that we will go forward with looking at signage. We do have one application for the June meeting, which is the Zion Lutheran Church. That meeting is June 17th at 4:30.
Related to that, I expressed concern that we're getting into a pattern of applicants giving us last-minute documents that don't afford members a reasonable amount of time to examine and decipher. And so we're going to work on that, members, between now and June to try to firm up the process so that you have more time to review. I think sometimes our applicants forget we are volunteers, and the majority of us, not including me, but the majority of us are working full time. And so time is precious to you. And I apologize that some of this stuff was flying in at the last minute. We're going to take some measures to try to improve that process. Don't make it friendly for the applicant, but we need to firm up some deadlines and getting things in so we can deliver those to you in a timely fashion. With that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
We're out of here. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Joe Galea.